The day my entire life fell apart looked almost too beautiful to be real, with bright sunshine stretching across the skyline and a cool breeze carrying the scent of fresh rain through the city streets. I stood outside the arrival terminal at Seattle, Tacoma International Airport, holding a small bouquet of white lilies, completely convinced that within a few minutes, man I had loved for 5 long years, would finally step back into my life and fulfill every promise we had made before he left. My name is Evelyn Carter, and for 5 years I built my future around one person named Mason Brooks, a decorated military officer who left for dangerous overseas assignments while asking me to wait until he returned home safely. During every lonely holiday and every sleepless night, I believed that true love was measured by patience, so I supported his struggling family business, cared for his aging mother after countless medical appointments, and ignored every warning from my own relatives because I believed our wedding day would make every sacrifice worthwhile. When the arrival announcement echoed through the terminal, my heartbeat became so loud that I barely noticed the travelers, pouring through the sliding doors with exhausted faces and heavy luggage. Then I finally saw Mason walking toward the crowd in his dress uniform, looking older, stronger, and far more distant than the man who had kissed me goodbye years earlier, yet I still smiled because I thought every painful memory would disappear the moment we embraced. Before I could even call his name, a beautiful young woman wearing a light blue summer dress rushed through the crowd, with tears streaming down her face, and threw herself into his arms without the slightest hesitation. She wrapped both arms tightly around him while crying that she had missed him every single day and had dreamed about this reunion for years. And instead of stepping away, Mason gently held her against his chest with a tenderness I had believed belonged only to me. I stood frozen as the bouquet slowly slipped from my hands, watching the flowers scatter across the polished floor, while hundreds of strangers walked around me without realizing they had just witnessed the moment my future disappeared forever. Mason looked over the young woman's shoulder and finally noticed me standing there in complete silence. But instead of waiting for an explanation, I turned around, walked straight toward the exit, and decided that the woman who had spent 5 years sacrificing everything for someone else would never exist again. The cold afternoon air hit my face the moment I stepped outside the airport, yet it felt refreshing because it cleared away the last illusion I had been carrying for 5 years. Before starting my car, I pulled out my phone, ignored the dozens of missed notifications that were already appearing, and called the only person who had always believed I deserved far better than the life I had chosen. The call was answered almost immediately by my longtime financial advisor, Daniel Hayes, whose calm voice carried genuine concern the instant he heard mine after so many months of silence. I told him that every pending investment connected to the Brooks family should be placed under immediate review, and that no additional funding, approvals, or financial support should move forward until I personally decided their future, leaving him stunned because he knew how fiercely I had protected that family for years. As I drove toward downtown Seattle, memories filled every mile of the highway, reminding me of everything I had abandoned in the name of love and loyalty. I had walked away from an executive position inside my family investment company, ignored opportunities that people spent entire careers chasing, and devoted my knowledge to saving another family business that had been drowning in debt simply because Mason promised we would build a life together after his service ended. My phone suddenly vibrated with an incoming message from Mason, and for a brief moment I stared at his name without opening the conversation because part of me already knew every excuse would sound exactly the same. The preview read that nothing was what it looked like and begged me to give him a chance to explain everything, but I calmly deleted the message, blocked his number forever, and realized that peace sometimes begins with one simple decision. Instead of driving to the apartment where I had waited for him through countless lonely nights, I turned onto a quiet road leading toward the Carter family estate that I had not visited since choosing love over my own future, years earlier. As the elegant iron gates slowly opened before me and the familiar home of my childhood came into view, beneath the evening sunset, I understood that I was not returning as the heartbroken woman who had left years ago, but as someone finally ready to reclaim the life she had sacrificed. The familiar driveway seemed smaller than I remembered, yet every corner of the estate carried memories that reminded me who I had been before love convinced me to settle for less than I deserved. As I stepped out of my car, several longtime staff members recognized me immediately, and the warmth in their smiles made me realize that some places never stop feeling like home, no matter how many years pass. Inside the library, my grandfather, William Carter, sat quietly beside the fireplace studying business reports instead of relaxing, proving that even retirement could never change the habits of a man who had built one of the most respected investment companies in the country. He looked up when I entered, carefully reading the expression on my face before closing the folder in front of him and asking only one question, which was whether I had finally come back because I was ready to stop living someone else's dream. I walked across the room and admitted that I had made the biggest mistake of my life by giving away years that could never be returned, expecting disappointment or anger from him after ignoring my family for so long. Instead, he slowly stood, placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, and told me that failure only becomes permanent when a person refuses to stand up again, reminding me that every member of the Carter family had survived far greater battles. The following morning, I arrived at Carter Global Headquarters before sunrise, where dozens of senior executives gathered in the main conference room after receiving an urgent notice that the company president had called a special meeting. Their conversations stopped the moment I entered because many of them had not seen me in years, and the surprise on their faces quickly turned into respect, as my grandfather proudly announced that I would officially return to lead the company alongside him. After the meeting ended, Daniel entered my office carrying a detailed financial report that revealed the Brooks family business was surviving only because of the investments, negotiations, and strategic partnerships I had quietly arranged over the past 5 years. As I carefully closed the report, I realized that I had never depended on Mason to build my future because the truth was much simpler since he and his entire family had been depending on me all along. Late that afternoon, Daniel returned with another confidential report that revealed the Brooks family company was facing serious financial pressure after several major investors began questioning its unstable cash flow and delayed projects. He quietly explained that if I chose to withdraw every agreement I had personally negotiated over the years, the company would lose its strongest source of credibility almost overnight without me needing to break a single law or act unfairly. Before I could respond, my office assistant informed me that Mason had been waiting in the reception area for nearly an hour, refusing to leave until he spoke with me face to face. I took a deep breath, straightened my jacket, and calmly told her to invite him inside because the frightened woman who once avoided difficult conversations no longer existed, and I wanted him to see exactly who I had become. Mason walked into the office looking exhausted, with dark circles beneath his eyes and regret written across his face. But the confidence he once carried had completely disappeared as he stood silently in front of my desk. He apologized for everything that happened at the airport and insisted the young woman had been an old family friend who acted without warning, claiming that he never intended to hurt me and begging for one chance to explain the misunderstanding. I listened without interrupting until he finished speaking, then quietly reminded him that betrayal is not measured by a single moment but by every choice leading to that moment, including the secrets, the silence, and the false promises that slowly destroy trust. I told him that while he expected me to wait faithfully for 5 years, he never respected me enough to tell me the truth about the people who still held a place in his heart, and that was a decision no apology could erase. Mason lowered his head and admitted he had taken my loyalty for granted because he believed I would always forgive him no matter what happened. But by then his words no longer carried the power they once had over me. I stood, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city skyline, and calmly wished him a successful future before asking security to escort him out, knowing that the hardest goodbye of my life had also become the first step toward the strongest version of myself. Only a few days after our meeting, the business world was buzzing with news that Carter Global had announced an ambitious expansion across the Pacific Northwest, drawing the attention of investors who had once overlooked our competitors. At the same time, several financial institutions quietly withdrew their confidence from the Brooks family company because they finally realized that the woman responsible for many of its greatest successes was no longer standing behind it. Over the following months, I watched from a distance as the life I had built for someone else slowly disappeared. Yet I felt no satisfaction in another person's downfall because revenge had never been my true goal. My greatest victory came from rebuilding my own future, surrounding myself with people who respected my talent, and discovering that genuine happiness begins the moment we stop begging for appreciation from those who never valued us. One evening, I received a handwritten letter from Mason, filled with apologies and memories of the dreams we once shared together. But the words no longer stirred the emotions that had once controlled my heart. I folded the letter, placed it inside a drawer without anger or bitterness, and quietly accepted that some chapters deserve to remain closed because reopening them only invites old pain back into a peaceful life. Standing on the rooftop terrace of Carter Global headquarters as the sun disappeared behind the Seattle skyline, I realized that losing the person I loved had unexpectedly helped me rediscover the person I was always meant to become. The woman who once measured her worth through sacrifice had transformed into someone who understood that real love never asks you to abandon your dignity, your dreams, or the family that believes in you when the rest of the world walks away. Looking back now, I no longer remember the airport as the place where my heart was broken because it became the place where my new life truly began, proving that every painful ending can become the first page of an even greater story when we choose courage over regret. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.